Chapter 9. Shonda. Shonda paced the floor of her living room, the walls that had once given her peace now closing in on her. She wanted to find solace in the familiar, but no matter how many circuits she made around the room, she felt further away from the comfort she craved. She wished she could erase the tension that had built up in recent days and find the peace she was so used to, but it didn't seem to be coming. Pulling out her phone, she stared at the screen and chewed on her lip. She knew she needed to talk to Deacon, but she also knew that she'd have to tell him everything, and she wasn't sure how that was going to go. She took a deep breath and tapped out the message. "Please come over as soon as you can. I have something I need to tell you." Then she hit send before she could change her mind. With no idea how long it might take him, she wandered into the kitchen to make tea or a snack, anything to get her mind off the conversation she didn't want to have. As she turned the burner on, she glanced around at the kitchen. It was small but homey, not fancy by any means, with its dark green countertops and checkered green and white linoleum floor. But it was clean and mostly organized, although it was very clear a child lived here as well. His drawings, though he didn't do them much anymore, covered the white refrigerator, and the cereal box he'd used this morning sat on the floor in front of the pantry, instead of on the shelf where it belonged. With a sigh, she picked it up and put it back in its proper place. What would happen if she lost her job? Would she and Dante have to move? She had some money in savings, but not enough to cover the house payment for long. The tea kettle whistled, and she turned the burner off quickly, not liking the way the shrill sound set her nerves on end. Maybe a move wouldn't be so bad. Maybe getting out of this house and this town was just what she needed. But she liked her job, and she would hate to uproot Dante. Hopefully Deacon would have some answers, or at least some advice. Warm tea in hand, she walked back into the living room and glanced out the window. Deacon's truck was just pulling into her drive. She took a small sip, set her mug down, and then squared her shoulders. The time had come. She opened the door before he even knocked and stepped back to let him enter. Out of habit, her eyes scanned the street behind him for anything out of the ordinary before focusing on him. "Did something happen?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "You could say that." She led the way to the couch and motioned for him to sit down. "I got called into HR today. Evidently, Dr. Nelson didn't like that you came to the appointment yesterday, and he wants another one this week, tomorrow." Deacon was already shaking his head before she finished. "You can't go back, Shonda. I don't know exactly what that man did to you, but it's not good." She held up a hand to stop him. "I know that I can't go back, but Deacon, if I don't, I will probably get fired tomorrow. We need to figure out a plan of what to do next. I have some savings, but they won't pay the bills for long." Deacon sighed as he shifted on the couch. "Okay. Are there any other nursing jobs in the city you could get?" "Maybe, but that's the only hospital, so it would have to be at a doctor's office, and I don't know that anyone is hiring. Besides that, what if they blacklist me? I mean, whoever is behind this has some pull. What if they flag my name so that no one will hire me?" She could tell from Deacon's minimal reaction that he had considered this as well. "It's a possibility, for sure, but let's not create obstacles that don't exist yet. First, let's see if any other places are hiring. If you couldn't find a job as a nurse, could you do something else?" Shonda sighed and folded her arms across her chest. Could she find another job? Maybe. But did she want to? Not really. For a short time, maybe, but hours are going to be an issue. What I like about the hospital is that they were willing to give me a shorter shift so that I could drop Dante off at school and be here when he comes home. I may not have that option with a new job, which will mean hiring someone to do that. He's too young to be home alone. Right. Deacon tapped his lips as he thought. Well, I can probably help out for a few days, though I don't know how much longer I can stay. I have a job back in Fire Beach that needs me too. Her eyes fell to her lap. Of course, he had a life he wanted to get back to. She wondered briefly if he had someone he needed to get back to as well. I know. I'm so sorry I dragged you into this. Deacon placed a hand on her arm. Hey, I'm not. I'm glad you called me. Eric is looking into this, but it may take some time. There is one other option we could consider. She lifted her eyes to his, hope filling her for the first time. What's that? You and Dante could come back to Fire Beach with me. If your name is flagged, I know someone who could help you get a new identity. You could even stay with me until you got settled. I know it's not ideal since you've created a life here, but it's an option. Shonda was quiet for a moment as she processed his words. If he was offering to let her live with him, even for a short time, then maybe there wasn't someone else in the picture. But would he see a future with her, especially after she told him the truth? And if he didn't, could she stay in his town? It's a good option. I have my job and Dante has his school, but that's all we have here. My parents passed a few years ago, and there's nothing else tying us to the area. Do you think the hospital there would be hiring? I can make some calls, Deacon said. I've gotten to know several of the doctors, and while none of them are in charge of hiring, they could definitely put in a good word for anyone I vouch for. And if worse comes to worse, I know a guy who owns a restaurant who could hire you until something opens up. Shonda nodded slowly as she played out the scenario in her head. Okay, that's at least something. But she couldn't seriously entertain the idea until Deacon knew the whole story. She chewed on her lip and her eyes dropped to her lap, where she dusted a minuscule piece of lint off her leg. There's something else I need to tell you before we consider that option, though. Something that might change your offer. Deacon furrowed his brow. Change my offer? What could you possibly have to tell me that would change my offer? We may not be together any longer, Shonda, but I want you to be safe, you and Dante. That's just it, she said. It's about Dante. Before she could say anything else, the front door flew open and Dante raced inside. Mom, there was a car today at school. You told me to watch for anything out of the ordinary, and I've never seen this car before. It was all black and was parked by the fence the whole day. The windows were dark, so I couldn't see if anyone was inside, but that's weird, right? It was more than weird. It was terrifying, but she couldn't let Dante know that. That's definitely weird, Dante. Her voice trembled with fear, no matter how hard she tried to keep it even. You never saw anyone, though? No one tried to talk to you? Dante shook his head. No, I stayed close to Mr. E, the recess teacher. Is it the bad guys, Mom? She pulled him into a hug and kissed the top of his head, surprised that he didn't pull away like normal. No, sweetie, I'm sure it's nothing, but I need you to be extra careful from now on, okay? Keep your eyes open like you did today, and tell me anytime you see something out of the ordinary. Dante nodded and pulled back. Okay, Mom, I will. Can I go play video games now? A part of her wanted to say no because she didn't want to let him out of her sight for a minute, but she still needed to talk to Deacon, so she agreed. Sure, honey, I'll call you when dinner's ready. Cool. Without even acknowledging Deacon, he hurried out of the room. Deacon stared after him for a minute and then turned questioning eyes on Shonda. Shonda, how old is Dante?